So yes, in the cloud computing subject, the another module is all about the virtualization. And in module 1 we saw some insights about virtualization, and we have a brief idea what is virtualization and other taxonomy of it. So yes, in this module we will be seeing what is virtualization. We will have a brief introduction about it, and the characteristics of virtualized environments and taxonomy of virtualization techniques, execution virtualization, other types of virtualization, and the major another important factor to learn in this module is all about what is the advantages and disadvantages, that is the pros and cons of virtualization technology and its example. So yeah, let us see. So when it comes to virtualization technology is one of the fundamental components of a cloud, especially in regards to infrastructure based services. Virtualization allows the creation of secure, customizable and isolated execution environment for running application, even if they are untrusted, without affecting others user application. The basis of this technology is the ability of a computer program or a combination of a software and hardware to emulate an executing environment separate from the one of the host, such as program. When it comes to the virtualization technology, virtualization allows the creation of secure, customizable, and isolated execution environment for a running application, even if they are untrusted, without affecting the others user application. That is what we saw. So in that, why it is so popular, what is the reasons for it, why the virtualization techniques are more required. It's only because whatever it is mentioned here, that is increased performance and computing capacity, underutilized hardware and software resources, lack of a space and green initiative, rise of administrative cost. So when it comes to the increased performance of computing capacity, high end side of the PC market, supercomputers can provide immense compute power for the hundred or thousands of virtual machine. And when it comes to underutilized hardware and software resources, increased performance and computing capacity, the effect of limited of user resources will also matter here. And lack of space, it is all about most cases enterprises cannot afford to build another data center to accommodate additional resources capacity. So whatever that we discussed there in detail, they have explained here. Next is the characteristics of virtualized environment. It is one of the important question in the aspects of your exam as well as your internals. When it comes to this, characteristics of virtualized environment, virtualization is a broad concept that refers to the creation of a virtual version of something, whether hardware or a software or storage or a network. In a virtualized environment, there are three major concepts, that is guest, host, and virtualization layer. The guest represents the system component that interact with the virtualization rather than the host as would normally happen. The host represents the original environment where the guest is supposed to be managed. The virtualization layer is responsible for creating the same or different environment where the guest will operate. So this is the virtualization reference model, a pictorial representation, where you have a guest layer, virtualization layer, and host layer, When it comes to the virtualization layer, it lies between the guest layer and the host layer. When it comes to the virtualization layer, there it has something called a software emulation. So this is done when it comes to the contact of a host, where host has the physical hardware, physical storage, and physical network, where in order to the where the host, in order to connect to the guest, it has to pass through the virtualization layer, where physical hardware will be softwarely emulated for the virtualization hardware, and that is encrypted in the form of virtual image, and then the connection will happen. So that is how basically the pictorial representation is given. So that is called as virtualization reference model. The characteristics of a virtualized solutions are increased security, managed execution, and probability. So when it comes to increased security, the virtual machine represents an emulated environment in which the guest is executed. All of the operation of the guest are generally performed against the virtual machine, which then translates and applies them to the host. This level of indirection allows the virtual machine manager to control and filter the activity of the guest, thus preventing some harmful operations from being performed. For example, applets downloaded from the internet run in a sandboxed 3 version of the Java virtual machine, which provides them with a limited access to the hosting operating system resources. Both the JVM and the .NET runtime provide extensive security policies for customizing the execution environment application. Next is the managed execution. Virtualization of the execution environment not only allows increased security, but a wide range of feature also can be implemented in a particular. Sharing, aggregation, emulation, and isolation are the most of the relevant features. So you can see the sharing, aggregation, emulation, isolation, and other stuff, where how it is being functioned enabled by the managed execution, and there is a major difference between all these things which is explained. Okay. Next, when it comes to sharing, virtualization allows the creation of a separate computing environments within the same host. In this way, it is possible to fulfill the exploits the capabilities of a powerful guest, which would otherwise be underutilized. Aggregation, not only it is possible to share physical resource among several guests, but virtualization allows aggregation, which is the opposite process. A group of separate hosts can be tied together and represents to a guest as a single virtual host. Emulation, guest programs are executed within an environment that is controlled by virtualization layer, which ultimately is a program. This allows for controlling and tuning the environment that is exposed to guests. For instance, a completely different environment with respect to the host can be emulated, thus allowing the execution of guest programs requiring specific characteristics that are not present in the physical host. Isolation, virtualization allows providing guests, whether they are operating system or the application or the other entities, which a completely separate environment in which they are executed. The guest program performs its activity by interacting by an abstraction layer, which provide access to the underlying resources. Next is the portability. sorry, in the previous slide also I told probability, it is portability. The concept of portability applies in the different ways according to the specific type of virtualization considered. In the case of hardware virtualization solution, the guest is packed into a virtual machine in the most of the case can be safely moved and executed on the top of virtual machine. In the case of programming level virtualization as implemented by JVM or .NET runtime, the binary code representing application components, jars, and assemblies can be run without an accomplishment or an implementation of corresponding virtual machine. This makes the application development cycle more flexible and application deployment very straightforward. One version of the application in the most cases is able to run on a different platform with no charges. So in the upcoming slides, we'll discuss about the taxonomy of virtualization and technique.